When someone dies in an Amish community, no funeral home takes over. No strangers handle the body. No one is left alone to grieve in a house emptied by absence. What happens instead is something the modern world largely stopped doing generations ago and has been quietly paying the price for ever since. The community arrives within hours. The word spreads without a phone call, in most cases through a neighbor who saw the bishop's buggy, through a child sent down the road with a message, through the particular stillness that settles over a farm when something has changed. Within hours of the death, people arrive. They do not wait to be asked. They come and they begin working, feeding the animals, milking the cows, tending the fields, cooking the meals. The family is relieved of every practical obligation so that they can do the only thing that cannot be delegated, which is grieve. The body stays home. In the modern world, a body is removed from the home within hours of death, transferred to a funeral home, and handled by professionals the family may never have met. The Amish do not do this. The deceased stays in the house. The body is washed and dressed by family members and close community women, not by strangers in a building the family will never see the inside of. The clothing is plain and white, made by the family, often the same garments worn at baptism. Women are sometimes dressed in the cap and apron they wore on their wedding day. The body lies in the home for the viewing period, present and visible and cared for by the people who knew the person in the place where that person lived. The coffin is built by hand. Within 24 hours of the death, a coffin is being built. A designated member of the community, sometimes a carpenter, sometimes simply a capable neighbor who has done it before, takes plain pine boards and constructs a box that is exactly what it is: simple, unadorned, honest. No handles, no velvet lining, no decorative veneer or glossy finish. The lid is flat and the dimensions are practical. It will hold a human body on its way to the ground, and that is all it needs to do. The Amish do not believe that the quality of a coffin reflects the worth of the person inside it. Everyone in the community will be buried in the same kind of box, from the bishop to the youngest child, and the equality of that is not incidental, it is the point. The coffin is usually completed the same day it is started, because there is no time to spare and no reason to delay. The grave is dug by hand. While the coffin is being built and the body is being prepared, men from the district make their way to the family cemetery, a quiet plot of land on or near the family farm, marked by small, uniform stones, and they begin digging. No backhoe, no hired crew, shovels in hands, and the particular silence of men doing necessary work together without needing to discuss it. The grave is dug to the correct depth, shaped carefully, prepared with the same attention to craft that the Amish bring to every physical task. This is not considered grim or burdensome. It is considered an act of love, one of the most concrete things a neighbor can do for a family in the hours after a death, taking a task that the grieving family cannot reasonably perform for themselves and completing it with care. By the time the funeral service is held, the grave is ready and waiting, prepared entirely by the hands of people who knew and loved the person who will be placed inside it. The house is stripped and rearranged. An Amish funeral does not take place in a funeral home or a church building. It takes place in the home of the deceased or in the family's barn, depending on the size of the gathering, and the gatherings are always large. Several hundred people attend even an ordinary Amish funeral. Before that can happen, the house must be transformed. Every piece of furniture is removed from the main rooms. Benches are carried in from neighboring farms and arranged in long rows. The room where the body lies in the open coffin is cleared of every decoration and personal item, stripped down to its walls and its light, so that the space becomes something between a sitting room and a sanctuary. This transformation is accomplished entirely by community members, men carrying furniture out through doors and windows, women arranging seating and managing the flow of the house so that hundreds of mourners can move through it over 2 days of viewing without confusion or chaos. No one is paid, no one is contracted. The work is simply done because it needs to be done, and the community is there to do it. The women cook for days. Beginning the morning after the death and continuing through the day of the funeral and beyond, Amish women cook. This is not casual hospitality, it is organized, large-scale, essential work. Hundreds of people will pass through that house over the viewing days. Hundreds more will gather after the burial for the meal that follows. Every one of them needs to be fed, and the grieving family cannot be expected to manage that. So the women of the district arrive with food raisin pie, which is so traditional at Amish funerals, it is simply called funeral pie. Thick soups made from bone broth and garden vegetables, casseroles heavy with egg noodles and cream, loaves of bread still warm from wood-fired ovens, cookies and cakes carried in baskets. The organization is seamless because it has been practiced across generations. Each woman knows what she is bringing, knows what others will bring, knows how to make the logistics of feeding a grieving community disappear so completely that the family never has to think about it once. The 3-day funeral process. From the moment of death to the moment of burial, the Amish allow 3 days. This is not arbitrary. It is the rhythm of a process that has been refined over centuries to give grief enough time without giving it so much time that the family is left suspended between loss and resolution. The first day is for preparation. The body is washed and dressed, the coffin is built, the grave is dug, the house is transformed. The second day is for viewing. The community comes in a steady stream from morning until evening, filing past the open coffin, offering quiet words to the family, sitting for a time on the benches that line the room. The third day is the funeral itself, followed immediately by burial. In communities where embalming is not practiced, which includes the most conservative Old Order districts, the 3-day timeline is not just traditional, but practical. The body will not be refrigerated. The process moves at the pace it was designed to move, and the family is carried through it by the structure the community provides rather than by their own depleted resources. The funeral service. The service is held in the home or the barn, with no amplification, no flowers, no decorations of any kind, and no eulogy. An Amish funeral does not center on the deceased, it centers on God, on faith, on the arc of salvation history that places this particular death inside a larger story the community has been telling together for generations. 4 sermons are delivered, each in Pennsylvania, Dutch, or German, without notes, by ministers who speak from memory and from faith. The first traces the story of creation. The others move through Scripture, through the life of the church, through the meaning of death for those who have committed themselves to God. 500 or 600 mourners fill the benches inside the home and barn and spill out into the yard, sitting in near silence for a service that lasts 2 hours or more. There is no microphone. There is no program. There are no printed order of service bulletins. The service proceeds as it has always proceeded, held in the language of the ancestors, spoken by men who were not trained in seminaries, but were chosen by lot and have given their lives to the same community they are now asking to trust God with one of its members. The procession and burial. When the service ends, the coffin is carried to the hearse, a large, plain, black carriage pulled by horses, the same design it has been for as long as anyone can remember. The pallbearers are 4 friends of the deceased. Married friends if the person was married, single friends if the person was single. Behind the hearse, a procession of carriages stretches down the road, dozens of them, carrying the entire community to the cemetery in a slow, deliberate column that marks the road for as far as the eye can follow. At the graveside, a brief service is conducted. The song "Good Night, My Beloved" is sung. It is sung at nearly every Amish burial. Then the coffin is lowered into the ground by ropes, not machinery, by the hands of the pallbearers who have been present since the beginning. And then the shovels come out. Every man present takes a turn. The grave is filled by the community, standing in the open air, in silence broken only by the sound of soil falling on pine, until the ground is level and the work is done. The year of mourning begins. The burial is not the end of what the community does. It is closer to the beginning of the longer, quieter work of carrying a family through grief. Starting the day after the funeral, the immediate family of the deceased begins a year of formal mourning. They dress in black, the women in black dresses, the men in black clothing every day for 12 months as a visible and continuous acknowledgement of their loss. The Amish do not believe in public emotional display. Grief is processed privately, in prayer, in the quiet of a home that now holds one fewer person. But the black clothing is public, and it communicates something to every member of the community who sees it. This family is still in mourning. They still need to be held. The loss is still fresh, even months after the burial, when ordinary life might otherwise suggest it has passed. The community responds to that signal throughout the year with continued visits, continued meals, continued assistance with farm work, continued quiet presence. Nobody expects the family to be finished grieving because the funeral is finished. The community stays because that is what community means. Not just showing up for the 3 days of the funeral, but showing up for the 365 days that follow. What this reveals: there is a reason that people who attend Amish funerals, English visitors, journalists, researchers who have spent years studying plain communities consistently describe the experience as one of the most profound encounters with death they have ever had. It is not the simplicity of the coffin, though the simplicity is striking. It is not the plainness of the service, though there is something clarifying about a 2-hour ceremony that contains no flowers and no eulogy and no attempt to soften the fact of what has happened. It is the community, the specific, practical, relentless presence of people who have taken every task the death requires and distributed it among themselves so that the grieving family never has to manage logistics while also managing loss. The coffin appeared. The grave was dug. The food was prepared. The house was transformed. The horses arrived, and the procession formed, and the shovels came out, and the grave was filled, and the family was never, at any point in any of it, alone. The modern world has professionalized death in ways that are efficient and sanitary and largely invisible to the families who use them. We pay strangers to handle what we cannot face, and we call this care. What the Amish do instead is face it together, directly, with their hands and their time and their willingness to be present for the parts of death that are not comfortable to witness. What they understand, and what most of the modern world has quietly forgotten, is that being with people in their hardest moments is not a burden. It is the most important thing a community can do. And the families who have been carried through those 3 days and through the year that follows know something about being held by people who love them that no professional service can replicate.